Finance and Performance Committee. We have Councillor Holness and Councillor Carey joining us online via Zoom. We'll move to our first item, which is apologies, and we have no apologies. So we'll move to declarations of interest. Does anyone wish to declare a conflict of interest with today's agenda? No, brilliant. We have no members of the public wishing to speak today. So we'll move to our very first item, which is the financial management report, rate funding statement as at 31 March 2024. And just before we kick off for questions, there was some confusion around item 4, attachment 5, not appearing on some people's stellar. It was there for some of the additions, but not for others. But yeah, it should hopefully be there now if you hadn't seen it. And that explains some of the room situations. Any comments before we kick off?
Through you, Chair, no.
Cool. And we'll open up for questions. Councillor Wheeler.
First one, just on Stream Waters. Our spending and budgets, dashboards are totally out of sync with Stream Waters. It's been raised 2 or 3 times. Why hasn't it changed?
Through you, Chair, yes, we have put the result as Wellington Water quite a number of times. The issue being is that their teams go through, do their budgets. When they get to the operational standpoint is when they tend to change. And at that point, the annual plan's already been set, and so we can't change them from our end. So we continue to show the results on our budgets, and they continue to show them on theirs. But it has been raised a number of times.
Change? It's quite confusing because
I do appreciate it. It's quite confusing. For Wellington Water to change, they would prefer that we do online budgeting, and that's not something we're going to go to.
All right.
We will continue to push them each year on it.
Yeah, so it's be better Wellington Water changed rather than us having to work around them.
Yeah, sorry, through you, Chair. But because we target the rates, when they start to move things around, it's just not something that we can do legally. We're bringing in rates for a particular water.
Okay. They might be flexible with their budgets, but we don't like to be. Any further questions? No discussion. Look, I'll happily move the first item to open session today. Councillor Wheeler. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Contrary no. It is carried. Item number 5. The non-financial performance report. Very. I've got questions, Councillor Alker.
Chair, I have a question on attachment 1, item 5, and that is there's a number of references to water meters in Wellington Water's reports, and so I'm just wondering how are our small area meters being monitored currently, and are they underutilised, or are we actually staying on top of whatever data is coming from them?
Through you, Chair.
That question should come to me. To be honest, this is an issue that hasn't come onto my radar in the time that I've been here as yet. So not wanting to defer, but I'm just wondering if the Chief Executive in your previous role, Jeff, might have a view on that. Otherwise, I'm happy to come back to you, do a bit more homework on it.
Through the Chair, there are 3 of those and moving around the network, trying to get a handle on which areas of the network perhaps linking more than others. So you potentially won't ever see a report coming to council personally to those meters, but what you would see or expect to see in time work programs that tie back to the areas where they've detected higher levels of leakage than they might be seeing in other conditions.
Councillor Wheeler?
It's just on page 22 or on the attachment. So it's about the water leaks. Wellington Water anticipate there's going to be a record number this summer of leaks. So the question I have is why don't we, as a council here, have a small team out there fixing the small leaks? Saving us water, saving us money, if Wellington Water can't do it themselves. And regardless of whether we're breaching contract or whatever, but our community is asking us to fix the leaks. Just like we asked to fix the potholes, we want something done about the leaks. If we can do it, why can't we do it?
Chief Executive.
Through you, Chair, they are having those discussions with the likes of Wellington City and I believe also with HUT to investigate the feasibility of doing that as an adjunct to the resources that Wellington Water put into it. And you recall some time ago there was some discussion about whether or not local plumbers could undertake some of that work. To be honest, I'm not sure where those conversations have got to, but we can certainly follow that up and perhaps report back in a future meeting.
I think it's very important for our community as well. We're talking about trying to save money. This would be a classic one.
Absolutely, and it's not something that's not come up before. We've been asking about this for years, is to have a look into the feasibility of it. And it'd be good to actually have a formal thought. So, yeah. Who was first? Councillor Swales.
I just want to say on the topic, I am aware that another councillor, Southern, has thrown $2 million at Wellington Water to accelerate fixing their potholes and given them a deadline of Christmas. So I'm not quite sure where that will leave Upper Hutt with regard to resources. No.
Did you get an answer to the rule?
Well,
No.
I'd like to know.
Yeah.
If you follow through with what
Yeah.
the Deputy Mayor said, you're right. I mean, if they prioritise Hutt City, the rest of us will be on the back burner.
But isn't that all the more reason to go out on our own in terms of regards to leaks? Take it into our own hands a bit more?
I think it gives us a good place for you to actually highlight that and say, and the minister actually said that they believe that Wellington Water didn't have the ability to ring fence funding.
Councillor.
Through you, Chair, and to the point of Councillor Wheeler, I was driving down Ferguson Drive a little while ago and watched a local plumbing firm repairing leaks on our road edge. I believe it's already happening, just not through us. Privately, Wellington Water, no Wellington Water were there, Wellington Water was employing people, so we'll be able to find out about if that is actually a happening thing.
Through the chair, I can confirm that is happening. But of course, you then saying, well, costs. Yeah.
Which almost seems wrong. If they can't do the work, they don't have the capacity to do the work, they can't put the city as well. Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Chair. I understand what we gave Wellington Water an extra $1 million. Was that correct or not? And if so, what's the situation there with the extra $1 million? Because I understand we did ask a couple of questions about what was the average cost. Could they spend it? So where are we at with that extra $1 million?
Through you, chair, that Wellington Water were keen to pursue this conversation until the issue of HUT injecting that significant sum of money was raised at the Union Board. And at that point, we've not really had any further contact with Wellington Water about that additional expenditure, other than what we do know, which we knew right from the outset, was that we're currently running around about 600K over budget for OPEX, which is of course the funding pool that they do use for legal repairs.
Isn't this a paradox? Where Wellington Water say the council haven't given us enough money to fix water leaks, but on the other hand, they're saying, oh, well, Hutt City gives an extra $1 million and Hutt City's $2 million, we can't handle both. So I can't reconcile what they're saying.
through the chair, I can't disagree with a word of that. Yeah, we're in limbo as well, trying to understand what Wellington Water are capable of delivering in the next 2 months in effect.
And another question referring to that attachment 1, item 5, that's on page 6 or page 22, and it talks about the resolution and days of non-urgent call, and it's gone from 42 days down to 23.6 and now it's slightly up to 28. Is there any reason why that they've been so wonderful and reducing the number of days to resolution? Yet they say there's a backlog. These figures, this information just doesn't gel, you know.
I guess the answer to that, just they did it faster, but yeah, context. Councillor Swales and Councillor Griffiths.
Still talking around water, but I want to go to page 32.
Yeah.
And when I look at our compliance with regard to statutory resource consenting, working in 20 days, and it looks really bad to go from 82, 86 and then 69%. And when you read the rationale, it is all around resource consenting with regard to Wellington Water. So they're failing us in a number of different areas, and I find it really, really disappointing. And what I would like to do is, it really, while some people are criticising us for the Three Waters situation, I'm wondering where it's going to leave us with water done better the way it is at the moment. And maybe this is cause for us to start thinking about, can we do water better ourselves, which goes on to what Councillor Wheeler said. Because, you know, if you take some of the workload off them, then maybe they can fix up the resource consenting with regard to our planning and things like this, because this is a regulatory timeframe. This costs us money. Every time they go over there, we have to pay, or we lose money that they give us. So that penalty should be actually passed on. But then if we do that, we have to pay anyway. So you just think, you know, we're treading on a treadmill, and somehow we need to be able to get out of it. And I'm not quite sure what the
The common denominator with Wellington Water is that they're pretty unaccountable, right?
Yeah.
If there's any problems, it's just, well, it's not our fault.
Absolutely.
Give us more money.
Well, it's our problem.
But yes, in terms of those resource consents,
Yeah.
is there any resource there? I noticed the Director of Planning's, the Regulatory Services isn't here, but is there any recourse to Wellington Water for them being delayed? Like, what escalation powers do we have?
Yeah, through your chair, this is a problem right across the region for council service by Wellington Water. And I understand, talking to a major developer, that they recently had a discussion with Porirua about funding an additional amount of money through that council to Wellington Water and get service. That same development has indicated that they were prepared to talk to Wellington Water in the same vein in relation to Upper Hutt, because it's costing them basically money, because of the time it's taken to get things like section 224, 223 certificates signed off, which then prevents sales going ahead. And so it is getting to the stage where developers are, I guess, pondering the same question. And it is having an impact on their ability to deliver, particularly housing, to the market. In discussions with Wellington Water, they acknowledge that from their perspective it is a resourcing issue, but they signed up to a service level agreement with councils, and that was an activity that they were to undertake on behalf of councils. The correct way for them to address this was an issue of the nature we're talking about, would have been to have renegotiated additional funding through the service level agreement to accommodate those additional costs, but that has not happened. Instead, the level of service is just gradually eroded to the point that it is causing concern.
Councillor Griffiths and then Councillor Newell.
Through you, Chair, to the CE. I'm just wondering, we sit around this table and we hear it over and over, and Councillor Wheeler said this is, the conversation's been going on for years. Could I ask, and if there is any support from anybody else in the room, I'm just be asking off my own back, can we bring a paper back to us in some way, shape, form, addressing some of these issues, or, I don't know, we've sent a letter, what else have we done? Wayne's been all over them. But I mean, it's something that we're getting it in the neck at every public event that we go to around the, free water, Wellington water, messes, the issues that we're having. We need to, see if we can get something done about it. If it's go out and fix our leaks on our own, get a steer from our council to our staff saying this is the direction we would like to be getting in. How do we do it?
Just to, I guess add a bit of richness to that conversation, Chair. At the moment, we're going through the process to review and renew the statement of intent for Wellington Water. And there has been a significant change this time round in that there seems to be not quite complete agreement, but a wider agreement amongst the councils of Wellington Water requesting better performance data around a whole range of metrics that would enable us to monitor more closely performance in a number of key areas. And the things that we've been talking about are some of those areas that have been identified. Look, and this is, arguably it's too little too late, because this, with a fair wind, this may be the last year of Wellington Water, or certainly close to it. And it's only now that we're starting to demand more commercially based performance measures from them. As I say, great that it's happening, but probably too little too late. And look, I guess the value of doing it with Wellington Water is that hopefully some of that collateral will be useful for whatever entity succeeds Wellington Water and stay on better footing with that organisation.
Councillor Newell.
Yes, my comments, Chair, follow directly from Councillor Griffiths' recommendation, if it was to be put forward. That what we need as councillors is some actual information. When the public tells us that why don't we do X, Y, Z, we need the facts around it. And so one of the presumptions that we have at the moment is that, goodness me, it must be cheaper to have some local people, plumbers, fix the leaks. But we don't know that that's a fact, do we? At the moment, we just, that's what the public seems to think. And when you're approached by an 80-year-old plumber who retired 20 years ago, who wants to give you a piece of advice, it would be great if we actually had those facts, which said, what does a scenario look like when we could actually do this job locally, and it not be on top of, we're already paying Wellington Water a specific amount of money. If we then choose to use some local plumbers to do some local work, are we talking about money on top of? And we know the problems with that right now. So I think what we're looking for is this is more information that we can take out there and speak to the public about.
Okay, then I'll move a second recommendation. That council reports back to that.
The officers.
Yeah, the committee directs the officers to investigate and report back on the use of local plumbers instead of Wellington Water Services for repairing leaks.
It's not just plumbers, it's because you've got.
Local contractors, like I say, local contractors.
Local resources.
Yeah. I'll second that. You'll second that, councillor Hammond will second that, and I've also added, there's another, do we have to move that one first?
No, you can add it.
I was just going to add another one, that we have the chair and chief executive of Wellington Water at the next meeting of this committee to answer a few questions, especially around that resource consent issues, because it's a pretty meaty one and I'd like to get it from the top. Some Yeah, councillor Neil, you second that?
You ready for the spin?
Well,
Just quick.
Councillor Wheeler?
What I find ironic is that 46% of our expenditure is to do with water. And yet we might have managed the 54% quite well. But truly, the 46% out there with water, and you ask me, you know, can you itemize? I have no clue at all about it, right? So when we see inefficiencies done that, I look at the 46%, should that be a lot lower?
Lower our spend on water.
Yeah.
Not one.
We'll give more bang for buck.
Yeah, better value for money. Yeah. Councillor Swales?
I'd just like to make a comment. I just want to make it really clear that the representatives from the council around the committee for the Wellington Water have always been very, very forceful when it comes to putting the position of Upper Hutt City Council on the table and actually articulating all of the things that has been talked about around this table. The issue that we've always had when we've sat at that table is that we're one vote out of 6, and we've always been outnumbered and outgunned. And it's only just recently that others have actually started to support us, even more so since we were thrown under the table or under the bus at the beginning of this year. And all of a sudden they've decided actually they need to stand with us and hear us rather than down cry us. So I just want to make that point clear that the representatives that represent you there have been very assertive in representing you.
Not for lack of trying.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Any further comments? Councillor Wheeler?
Nothing to do with water. Page 20 on economic development. Just want to ask a question on the city centre street parking. And on the data source, it says monitoring via sensors. Can you give me a reading on that? I didn't think we had sensors, but
Through the chair, I can categorically say we don't have sensors for
No.
parking monitoring, so I'm not totally sure.
what's that all about?
Come back to you.
That's me.
Yeah, can we please send a follow-up email? Explain.
Yeah, no problem. Through you, Chair.
Got any further comments or questions on this report? Leave it to you. Oh, well, then we have a couple of additional recommendations. We have those read back for the benefit of the committee, please.
So the committee recommends that council receives and notes that the non-financial performance report for 2023-2024-23. And the officers report back to council on the feasibility of using local resources to fix local water leaks. Is that the wording you want to use, or is there any other wording around?
Do we want to say more
Criteria?
specifically around excluding Wellington Water or?
Local, yeah, for these loans.
Yes, council
To fix.
engaging local resources to fix those leaks, yeah.
Can I just through you, Chair, I believe one of the things that they will say against it, and I'm not quite sure how you'll mitigate it in your recommendation, is that they've always said that any plumbers or any outsourcing they do have to meet a certain criteria in that. So are we quite confident that we actually have people in the local area that actually have sat there and meet that criteria? Otherwise this may be a waste of time.
So
Just checking.
we'll get an officer to answer that first,
Yeah.
then we'll open up the questions.
Through your chair, I know that we've got contractors that can certainly work on the main network.
Okay, yeah.
In terms of the lateral sections, I'm not so sure. We do. Yeah,
Okay.
there we go.
Supposed to be a contract for Wellington Water in the first place. Councillor Newell, then Councillor Whelan.
My point in this is getting down to that pros and cons, that's what I'm looking for, because that is one of the questions, isn't it? And I think that's what I'm looking to get some of that information down on paper.
Yeah, and this is just to report back rather than to act on it straight away, to give us information of what can happen. Councillor Wheeler?
So Wellington Water have a criteria listed 1 to 5 leaks, 1 being a geyser coming out of the middle of the street, through to 5 being little leaks in that. Here, and I assume, you know, they'll have specialists doing the 1s and 2s out there. It's the 4s and 5s that we're really concerned about. They're the ones that have been going for 6 months or 10 months or whatever. The 4s and 5s are the ones that we should be looking at, and they're the ones I'd have my plumbers and that fixing up the 4s and 5s. The 1s, 2s and 3s, Wellington will be doing the big ones, all right?
Yeah.
But the 4s and 5s are the ones that have been going for a long time. If you round up all the 4s and 5s, they'll come to be more than half a dozen geysers, you know, there's lots of them.
They might be low volume, but they go for 6 months and they certainly put out a lot of
Build
water.
up.
Maybe smaller. I just had one question. In-house council. I think you were reviewing not too long ago our agreement with Wellington and Water about our ability to do this. With my correct? To use outside resources?
Yeah, I mean, yes, it was, but I don't think it expressly prohibits it.
That would-
We've already done it once. It's the
Yeah,
main.
the Main Street was a perfect example of us doing it well. All right, cool. I'll
In any case, if I may chair, they're contracting to the Upper City Council. So the Upper City Council would set the health and safety requirements and all the contractual requirements, so not contracting to the Wellington Water.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
that's the point of difference, I think.
absolutely. And we have a question from Councillor Kerry online.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's a question around if we're having this this paper and this review. Who's bringing the standards? Because understandably, there's drinking water standards and things around what's the criteria to do contracting. Are we asking Wellington Water to provide that advice, or are we getting that advice ourselves based on, you know, on what contractors are required to meet?
My intention to be written by our officers, but she
Okay.
can comment.
Through you, Chair, that information is relatively easily obtained through Tomato Arawai. In fact, I think they circulate it reasonably frequently. I saw it not so long ago myself. So, and it does specify the criteria remaining around making sure there is competency to understand public health implications of working on a public water supply network.
Just a supplementary, then surely it's just a case that they meet certain tickets, right? Like it's not that piece isn't a hard one. Is the question then more around our does the advice need to be around our contractual arrangements, whether we can do this, not the competency of operators?
Through you, Chair, in reality, what you're saying is absolutely right. It would depend upon how easy it is for us to negotiate an arrangement with Wellington Water that would allow that to happen.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Joel.
And so part of my querying is coming back to, yes, we understand that people need these standards, but my question is, do plumbers in Upper Hutt have those standards or not?
Well, this is what we'll hopefully be answered in this report that comes back.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, through you, Chair, if not plumbers, certainly the contractors working in the Three Waters.
Yeah, civil. Cool, I'll move the recommendations. Do I have a seconder? Oh, Councillor Hammond. All those of that opinion say aye. Can't do no. Carried. Now we move to the debtors report, which is now in public for the first time. However, there is a section that is still non-public to protect privacy. We'll open it up for questions. Councillor Wheeler.
Just on item 6, library debt management. So we've got $7,327 either on lost or on returned books. So those people who have either lost it or non-returned them, have they been like put on the ban list, and are debt collectors involved in trying to collect that debt as well, or are we writing it off?
Director of Community Services?
Through each year, the figure is around about, if there is $15, maybe 20, it's around that is owed at the library. The card is no longer able to be used at the library, and that's per the paper. Once it's accumulated, if it accumulates above that, and it's the 60 that comes over to the council finance team, and it won't accumulate is the wrong word to use. If it is above that amount and it is outstanding and the library is unable to get that, it eventually comes over to the finance team. So they don't use their card. They can't use their card once it gets above, and I think it's around about $15 owed.
Supplementary. So if it goes over to council to try and claim it, what's our success rate? Do we claim anything back on it, or is it?
Through you, Chair, yes, yeah, we do. We make contact with the customer to see if we can get the money. And sometimes we do end up having to write it off because it's not for the amount that it is. We typically wouldn't take it to a debt collector. We would continue to chase it in-house.
So if I can add to that too, Chair, is sometimes the library and
Yes.
themselves seeking that payment are able to get that before it is passed over to the finance team as well.
Councillor Alderson?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask the director about the water debtors. How much of that would be due to leaks as opposed to high use?
Sorry, through the chair, you don't, so the chief executive can answer that.
Through the chair, the bulk of it is due to on property leakage. We installed a meter, or if there is already a meter in place, we then monitor it carefully. And this debt accrues depending on how long it takes for people to undertake repairs. It's an incentive to encourage that quickly. So the debt racks up quickly as well.
A lot of it gets written off right after the leak gets fixed. How much of that would we write off? Goodwill.
Through the chair, we do have a policy which sort of determines the criteria that we can apply and the amount of remission we can apply to that debt. In fact, in the not too distant future, I'd be looking to bring cases to council because there's actually a limit as to what I personally feel comfortable remitting. And some of those debts that we're encountering are now significantly beyond their comfort level.
Because the bulk water still gets paid for by us, and we're remitting it. It's the rest of the ratepayers that cop it. Any further questions, Councillor Newell?
It's not a question, actually. It's just to comment and say how much more valuable this way of reporting is. Well, we can just sort of see with the graphs and things. I think this is excellent, rather than the commentary we had before, which just really doesn't add anything.
Councillor Carson and Councillor Wheeler?
I'm just referring to the water debt management. The one that's over 90 days is if you have a straight line that has increased from just under 50,000 to just over 100,000 over those years, which so that's what the first point from that graph. But the second one is just demonstrates that once a debt goes over 3 months, it gets increasingly difficult to recover it, and more work's required to cover it. And so whereas you look at the 60 to 90 days one, it dips around, and probably that dips around, that's the green one, probably dips around because it coincides with payment dates. But then, so people use that 30-60 even though they're using that scheme of interest. But once it gets over 90 days, there's other issues in play. And this graph, clearly shows that.
And historically, a lot of that's actually been due to also Wellington Water's capacity to help fix it, right? To get their experts out to look.
Through you, Chair, no, that is actually true that they probably do. They certainly meet performance standards. That's an issue. This is more a reflection of either the ability or willingness of the private property owner to, I guess, first of all, acknowledge there's a leak on property, and secondly, to then get that leak remediated.
Yeah, Can I just have a secondary question? Can we see the rates arrears graph on para 7? Can we see a similar graph that we have for water debtors showing the actual debtors that are 60 to 90 and over 90? Just to see, while we've got rates arrears, that's just all arrears, but I would like to see how much of those are over 90 days or whatever, or some other category as well, please, if that's okay.
Make a note of
Just
that.
to see what the trend is over those 4 years.
Councillor Wheeler and Councillor Swales.
Just on item 5, with Greater Wellington, have they run out of money? Fines or something to pay, but obviously there's a reconciliation of charges. How's that going? Progress?
Through you, Chair, this is now since been paid.
Thanks.
Councillor Swales.
I was just going to follow on from Councillor Carson with regard to the rates arrears and totally support having a 30-60 day, 90-day thing. But I find it really concerning when I do look at the data and the table where I look at the 31st of March 2024, where total rating units with arrears is 2,253, and you can see that it's actually increasing. And my concern is knowing what's happening in the employment space and having the employment numbers released today, that those figures might start to increase and have an impact on our ability of our community to pay rates. So I think it's quite cognizant that we actually see these figures and actually have the 30-60 day, 90-day trend so that we can have an understanding of what's happening in our community. So I would certainly support that because it is of a concern knowing that around 84% of our people do commute into Wellington. And that's where a big job loss is. And I also find it really valuable too when I look at the 2 graphs on page 38 when it breaks it down into suburbs. And when I look at that, I think when we have that overlay of deprivation, which was done a wee while ago, it certainly does mirror that deprivation profile that we were given a number of years ago, because I can't see that it would have changed much.
But not for suburbs.
Yeah.
But not for
No. Yeah.
I also asked for, just on regard to the graph under para 9, just for percentages to be added there.
Yes.
Just to give a bit more context around how many units, because otherwise it doesn't really give too much insight. Any further questions? No, okay, I'll move the recommendation. Second it, His Worship. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Contrary no, it's carried. That concludes our public part of the meeting. I move that we move the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings in accordance with the reasons noted in the agenda. Councillor Griffiths. All those opinions say aye.
Aye.
Contrary no, it's carried. Thank you.